Good morning and welcome to the first in our fall series of small business webinars. My name is Deb Alvin and I am with Montana State University Extension in the Community Development Program. And I want to remind you all today that we are recording this particular webinar and we will have it archived on our website. And before we leave today, I will go ahead and put that URL up on the screen for you. Today's webinar, just so you know, we've got some great sponsors. Our sponsors today are the Small Business Development Centers, which are affiliated with the Montana Department of Commerce and the U.S. Small Business Administration, Montana Economic Developers Association, the Community Development Program at MSU Extension, and we have additional support from the Great Falls Development Authority and the University of Montana. So what we're going to do this morning is we're going to be with Phil Quigley, and the name of his webinar, Hire for Your Peak Season and Don't Lose Money Doing It. So I'm going to introduce Phil in just a moment, but I want to ask you all to remember to answer these 4 questions that you see right here. They will help us further refine our webinar offerings to you. And Phil has decided he's going to take questions throughout his entire presentation. So feel free to type your questions on the left-hand side. You'll see that I've already gotten there before you and put in a few announcements. And so just go ahead and type as you wish during Phil's presentation, and he will take those questions as he goes through his presentation. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Phil. And Phil, do you want to start your webcam?
Oh, yes. Thank you very much. I will do so.
Yes, so we can all look at Phil while he is speaking, which is always kind of fun. So the devastatingly handsome gentleman on the top there is Phil Quigley. And I'm just going to read a few really interesting things about Phil. He honed his marketing, talent development, and coaching and cross-cultural communication skills in the emerging markets of Hong Kong, Korea, China, Singapore, Australia, Indonesia, Taiwan, and India, where he spent most of his 14-year career with Yahoo. He cut his entrepreneurial teeth as vice president of sales for Axion, a startup toy venture comprised of veteran Atari engineers and marketers. At the expense of well-funded, heavily entrenched competitors, he drove sales to the $20 million level before helping to sell that company to Hasbro. He then moved to Kalispell, Montana in 2017 and established his own talent development consultancy, Phil Quigley and Associates, creating customized learning solutions that support high-performance cultures. In his career, he's designed and delivered high-impact programs for Zenonco Bank in Zambia, Facebook in India, and Zain, a major Middle Eastern telecom in Baghdad. And in the U.S., Phil has implemented successful learning programs for the California Fire Academy, Yahoo, Facebook, Cloudera, Impacts Laboratories, Inside View, Risk Management Systems, CASA, Proof Research, Bank of America, Macy's, Intel, and On24. So we are very, very fortunate to have Phil with us this morning. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you, Phil.
Hey, great. Thank you so much, Deborah, and thanks for signing in here, everybody. I'm going to crank up my deck here. And Deborah, I don't see that yet. Can you put the deck up? I'm not sure it's there on my screen here. Deborah? Well, guys, we have a small technical difficult here, and I apologize for that because I'm looking for the deck that should be on the screen here, and I want to make sure it opens up. And I'm not sure, Deborah, if you're there, can you help me with this? Guys, don't go away.
I'm here, Phil.
Hi,
Can one of
Deborah.
our participants
The deck is.
type in and just see if, let us know if you can see the presentation?
Yeah, I can't see the deck on my screen. Remember, we had it before, but it's not appearing now.
Mhm. Okay, we've got some people typing. They're going to tell us if they can see it.
Oh,
Okay,
I can't see it
seeing
myself.
it.
Huh.
Okay, well, you know what, Phil? Why don't you just let me know when you want to advance it, and I will advance it.
Sure. I can't see anything on my screen right now. There's no deck on my screen. I guess the other guys can see it. That's great, and I'm glad you guys can see it, but I can't see mine. I wonder if there's a way to make that happen, Deb.
Um,
Remember, we had it up before. It was working perfectly.
I know. I'm just going to toggle through these screens again.
Guys, don't go away.
Thanks for putting up with us, guys. Do you see it now, Phil?
No, still nothing.
Well, shoot.
Am I hitting the right? And there's just a black screen with a little kind of a wheel in the middle.
Oh, you know, I think it's just loading on your. Phil may need to refresh. Phil, can you refresh?
Sure. Now, how do I do that? What do I do there? Hit next or?
And you need to start your webcam again, Phil.
Okay, let me do that. Okay, cool. But I don't see my deck, my slide deck. Hey, Jody,
Jason,
how you doing? I see
can
Jody
you
there.
tell Phil how to refresh his slide deck? Okay,
You know, I don't have my slides printed out, but let me do this. What I
Hey
can
Phil,
do,
this
I
is
can,
Jay Van Vost. Can you hear me all
Hi,
right?
Jay.
yeah, I'm
We
fine.
can. Jay, can you tell us how Phil can refresh so he can see his slide presentation?
So why aren't you doing a screen share? Why are his slides uploaded?
Because that's how Paul wanted it done. So
Okay. Go ahead and Phil, can you click the button that says share my screen secure?
Yes.
Go ahead and click that and then click the bubble that says desktop and then share.
I hit share my screen. I just did that. Okay.
And then hit the desktop and then share.
Okay.
but
And then what
that's
this will
only
do is
gonna
this will
work.
bring up then go ahead and click cancel on this. And do you have your PowerPoint or whatever on your system?
I do. I can go to that.
Yeah, go ahead and open that, and then that'll be shared with everyone on the presentation.
All right. Hold on.
Thanks to all of our attendees for sitting here. We really appreciate it. Like I said, this is our first one and we're still working out our bugs.
Okay. Coming up, here we go. Okay, can people see it now? Hello?
All right. So if you put in presentation mode,
Okay, I can hit share. Okay. Can people see this now?
you got to put it in slideshow mode, Phil, up on top.
Okay, hold on a second. I'll put it in slideshow. Okay. Okay.
All right.
Now you're all set.
Are we good?
Okay.
Okay.
We
Well,
are
thanks.
good. And Phil, you won't be able to see the questions on the side. So if people type some questions in, I will go ahead and read them out for you. And
Okay.
Jennifer just asked if the deck will be made available to attendees. Yes, and it is down at the bottom of your screen. You'll see under File Download, you'll see that the PowerPoint is right there. All right, so Phil, why don't you take it away?
All right, guys, thank you so much for your patience. And I proved that the technology sometimes can be a little bit difficult to muster, but thanks again for hanging in here with us. So what we're going to be talking about are several things. Number one, important ratios that you need to kind of consider when you're hiring good people and how to make those ratios or numbers work for you. We'll talk about some metrics, or if you will, numbers that really matter, and then a couple of ideas on how to hire effectively with your head as well as with your heart. So some ratios that are important. First example here is on this funnel that you can see on the right-hand side of your screen. 15 to 1, which means that for every roughly 750 applicants, about 50 CVs or resumes are screened. So the numbers that really matter here are the fact that you get a lot of resumes in the pipeline, and the key is to find a way to funnel them down so that the hiring manager or the reviewing manager has a short list. And that kind of, if you will, that funnel shows you the numbers of resumes it takes to really get down to one. I used to be in recruiting in India, and people would get literally hundreds of resumes for one particular position. And the unfortunate part was that we'd only screen perhaps 30 seconds to 45 seconds per resume. So it's a numbers game in a lot of ways. Here in Montana, we've received fewer resumes, so this may not be as applicable. Another metric to be concerned about is what we call staff sales ratio or revenue per employee. Depending upon the size of your business, you want to make sure that your revenues justify the hiring of people. For example, if you want to calculate that, the revenue employee number is important because it means that you're generating enough income to support a staff. So if you divide the average number of employees by the net revenue, you get the revenue per employee. And in effect here, let me go back one more time here. If you have a small company, in fact, I don't think the slide shows, but if you have a company that's generating, say, $350,000 per year, and you've got 5 employees, then that's roughly about $70,000, $80,000 per employee. So it's important to keep that in mind. Here are the top 20 tech companies by revenue per employee, and you can see Apple with almost $2 million per employee generates an awful lot of revenue per employee. My old employer, Yahoo, about 650,000 people. So revenue per employee is an important metric to judge your recruiting program by. Other metrics, and the reason we count on this is, first of all, it helps to advance the relationship between recruiting and the hiring manager so that we're hiring for the right reasons. It gives credibility to your recruiters by displaying that they understand the overall business goals. You define what's really important and expected of each recruiter. It's a great way to measure the effectiveness of the people that are doing the recruiting for your organization here. And here are the most frequently used metrics. There's 17 of them. We're going to cover a couple of them. Number one, time to fill, time to hire, source of hire, first year attrition, quality of hire, hiring manager satisfaction, candidate job satisfaction, applicants per opening, selection ratio, cost per hire, the candidate experience, the offer acceptance rate, the percentage of open positions, and then the application completion rate, recruiting funnel, sourcing channel, and sourcing channel cost. Now, these are kind of intimidating numbers and intimidating metrics, but we'll cover them just briefly. Time to fill is important. It's the time it refers to the time it takes to find and hire a new candidate, measured by the number of days between publishing that opening and hiring the candidate. So if you post an opening on, say, Indeed or Career Builder on June 1st, and you hire that person in September, that's a 3-month cycle. From the time that you first post the number of, or the position on whatever source it might be, that's what's important to care about. The time to hire is a little bit differently. This number represents the number of days between the moment a candidate is approached and the moment he or she accepts the job. A little bit different here. Here's a couple of examples. The average time to hire for example, in the US for customer service is like 21 days, 28 days for engineering, 17 for healthcare. And you can see the numbers here. In Silicon Valley, where I spent a lot of my time recruiting for companies like Yahoo and Facebook, the average time to hire was about 42 days, which is about 2 months. It's a fairly long period of time. So time to hire is an important metric when you're considering your recruiting. Source of hire means where are you getting the people from? Is it from LinkedIn or from Indeed, or is it from Craigslist? The applicant annual source is an important metric. Tracking that means, hey, where am I getting the biggest bang for my buck, or for my dollar? Is it for Facebook, for example? Is it from Instagram or perhaps Craigslist? It's important to know that. First year attrition means how many people stick around after the first year. Candidates often leave during their first year and they fail to become fully productive. So knowing how many people leave that first year is really important, because retention is critical if you're going to build your business. Quality of hire really means how are they performing based on your requirements. Are they exceptional employees? Are they meeting requirements? This is really an important metric to consider. Are the people that I'm hiring really delivering the results that we need for the organization? What about a bad hire? Well, a poor hiring decision can equal about 30% of the hiring individual's earnings. Not to mention the impact that it might have on your bottom line, especially if that employee is a customer-facing employee in sales or customer service. So cost of a bad hire can be bad for your image, for your reputation, and certainly for the morale of the rest of the people on the team. Hiring manager satisfaction. Here we have Michael Scott from Dunder Mifflin, the old office show. When the hiring manager is happy with the people, that means that that candidate is likely to perform well. He's going to be a successful hire, or she. Candidate job satisfaction means, are the candidates happy? Do they feel that they're being treated well? Are they given meaningful stretch assignments, especially for millennials who really want to know that their job counts and that they're making a contribution? Applicants for opening means, are we getting a lot of people who are interested in our jobs? The internal job board, sourcing agency, social media, there's various ways that you attract people. Typically, the company's career page might be one, or any internal job postings that you have on your site. Quality of hire, again, measured by how well are we doing. Cost per hire is really important. That's the hidden expenses of hiring employees. Cost per hire means the total cost invested in hiring individuals. And if you take a look at this little chart here, there's an external cost, advertising, agency fees, a candidate expense, new hire training cost, other costs, and then the internal cost, which is the time spent by the recruiter, the time spent by the manager. How much time are we spending in devoting to this candidate? The new hire onboarding time or lost productivity. So the total recruitment cost can be an important consideration when you're considering this. Offer acceptance rate really relates are we getting acceptances based by the number of offers that we extend? If we're getting a lot of rejections, then we're not getting a very good acceptance rate. The recruitment funnel really relates to the factors that go into the recruiting, the sourcing, the interviewing, the spending time with individuals to really develop a relationship with them. Sourcing channel, again, Are we using our channels effectively? Are we getting the biggest bang from our buck if we post it on Google or on Facebook or on Instagram or on any of the other Indeed, Monster, or Career Builder sourcing agencies? The channel cost is how much are we spending? So we want to make sure that we're getting, again, a good result from the investments that we're making. Application completion rate really relates to, are people interested in actually following through? So much of our time is spent, if you take a look at most companies, so much of our work can be done online. We can use our phones to apply for a position. If that process is complicated and long-standing and dragged out, people will probably not fulfill the completion. If your process makes it difficult for people to apply online, they're going to probably lose interest. Remember, you're in a kind of an arms race for good people. There's a war for talent, especially in Montana, with the employment rate something like, I think the unemployment rate being something like 4%, 3.97, I think is the latest number. That means a lot of people are out there looking for good people, and there's not that many of them. So we want to make sure that when you make it easy for people to apply, they will actually follow through and do that. So these are some of the things that we're talking about, revenue per employee. I want to make sure that we talk a little bit about a couple of other factors, and I'm going to open up, if I can, another deck right now, because this is an older deck. So let me take a minute to do that. In the meantime, are there any questions at all that my people have come up with here? Anything at all that comes to mind? Anything? Because if not, let me take you to the next area that I want to talk a little bit about here. And that is that we've talked about all the various 17 or so metrics in terms of considering hiring. And finally, I want to talk a little bit about some hiring techniques here. And this is called hiring with your head as well as with your heart. Number one, you're going to hire only to solve a business problem. It's really important that you know in advance what problem that person you're going to hire is going to be following and fulfilling. You want to hire for contribution as well as for cultural fit. Often we want to make sure that, hey, I want to hire people that kind of fit in with the group here, that can really kind of mesh with the team and feel comfortable. Also, you want to make sure you hire for contribution. Can they actually deliver something that can be important to your team? Often we concern ourselves with credentials. If you have somebody with a BS degree or an MBA, we sometimes favor that individual. But you want to make sure that when you hire somebody, they can actually deliver something as well as be effective in terms of their education. A common interview process is important. We'll talk about that in just a minute or two. You want to make sure you communicate clearly with the employees. Let them know where they stand. The biggest complaint that I've heard as a recruiter from candidates is that once they submit their resume and maybe have a telephone screen and maybe meet people in person, they never hear another word from that organization. They suddenly go silent, and that's a very concerning issue because your reputation as a hiring company is at stake too. So you want to check references. And I think it's really important. Often big companies don't do that. They sometimes leave it to maybe a recruiter, but I think if you're going to be a small business person here in Montana, you want to make sure you check those references diligently. There's a great story about years ago when Ernst & Young, a big accounting company, was doing an audit of the books at Smith & Wesson, the arms manufacturer. They found out that the chief operating officer had spent 5 years in the slammer for armed robbery. This never showed up in a reference check. So make sure you check them pretty diligently. It can cost you if you don't. And then finally, whatever you decide to do, make sure you thank your employee or thank your candidate. Word goes around very quickly. If people are treated well and they're treated badly, they tell everybody. So that's a couple of things to keep in mind. Ask performance-based questions. Most companies don't have a process for interviewing. They kind of enjoy it at a conversation. Tell me about your strengths and weaknesses and so forth. If you have a performance-based hiring process, I think you're going to be better off. Remember, you're hiring somebody based on their performance, not their presentation. And I always start with a high gain question, and it's one that I think really works for me, and that is based on all the things that you've done over the last year. What stands out for you as your most important accomplishment? And then you can drill down. Well, tell me a little bit more about the challenges that you faced. How did you build a budget for that? How did you overcome the resistance of other people? How did you make sure your clients or your customers bought into the process? And there's a term that I call PAR, problem, action, result. A very, I think, good model to use. The problem would be, tell me about a time when you had to, for example, win over a colleague whose support that you needed to complete a key project. What did you do to gain that support? That's the action, and the result would be,
Bill?
what was the result? Yes,
Bill, can I interrupt you real quick? Can you
Please
put
do.
your presentation show mode so that everybody can see the slide?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm looking at that now. Show mode, that would be share.
Yep. Just
Okay.
up at the very top, slideshow.
Yeah, okay. Let me do that.
I just want everybody to see your great slides.
Can they see it now? Hello?
That's fine.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you. So again, have a process that works for you. And I think problem, action, result is very similar. Tell me about a problem that you had. Give me an example of. Share with me the process that you took, the action, and the result. Very simple to do, but I think it's pretty powerful too. I like this, an interview principle from Jeff Bezos. He's probably the richest man in the world right now, even richer than Bill Gates or Warren Buffett. He says that there are still, I think, 3 questions that are important to him when he considers hiring, and I think it would work for just about everybody. Will you admire this person? Will he or she do something that will make them admirable? Will this person raise the average level of effectiveness of the group they're entering? In other words, will this person be a value add to the team? And finally, along what dimension might this person be a superstar? How can I give that person an opportunity to do their very best at work? How can I give them an assignment that plays to their strengths? So a couple of simple principles from Jeff Bezos to keep in mind. Culture and contribution. Just a word or two about that. Culture, by the way, is the bedrock of any organization. It's a set of informal rules and practices that underlie how people work to get stuff done. Are we informal? Are we at a first name basis? Are we more formal, where we use the term Mr., for example? Does this person mess with your colleagues and with yourself, your customers, your other stakeholders? Can he or she be something that you can enjoy working with? And finally, will this person contribute? Sometimes we might hire people that are a little cranky and a little bit more of an adverse or possibly a maverick, but the key is, can they actually add to the team? Sometimes it often happens, we find people that we don't necessarily love right away, but they're hard-hitting and hard-charging, and they do a great job for us. And then you can use PAR, P-A-R, to discover the kind of culture that brings out the best in that person. What can they do that brings out the best? And by the way, as a leader, as a small business leader or a hiring manager, your job is to help people be their best on the job and to give them assignments that play to their strengths. So keep that in mind as you think about how you can build the culture for the organization. Finally, sell the job, not the candidate. Often we are so concerned about winning that person over that we oversell them. We present too much of a business case that is compelling to them. Let them sell you. It's much more meaningful. If you sell too hard, that means you may be desperate, and people pick up on that. On the other hand, if you make them work for that job, if you make them, for example, come back to you with a paragraph or two on how they'd spend the first month on the job, or give you an example in writing of perhaps a business case that they've developed, or a graphic design that they might have done. Typically, that's a good way to get an idea of whether they can really deliver for you. The opportunity gap is the difference between what you offer and what they have now. What are they going to gain by coming to you? People leave typically for a couple of reasons. Number one is because they don't get along with their current boss and they're missing out on something, or there might be a more compelling offer someplace else, maybe with your organization. And when they say, well, I think it over and maybe get back to you a little bit later, that means you've got two chances to hire that person, slim and none. So I think if you close the interview with impact, I think that can be a more meaningful way to make a good impression on that candidate. I always ask a good question is, what question do you wish I'd asked you? In other words, what didn't I get at? How did I miss part of your talent or your skill? And then you can test their interest by saying something like, based on your experience with us so far, with the people you've met so far, your understanding of the company here, what's your position? What's your thought about this role? Does this meet your needs? Would you like to pursue it further? Test the waters. People will often say, well, I love the company, I really want to go forward further. Then that's a good sign. And then I think you can clarify your expectations with a person. Here's where we are in this process. And the next step we'd like to take with you. Here's what we're going to do next. People need to know whether there is indeed a next step. Maybe it's simply to, well, we'll get back to you in 2 weeks. We've got several more people in the pipeline, but we like what you've presented to us so far. People want to know where they stand, especially if you've got, a number of irons in the fire and you're competing with other companies. Let them know where they stand, because obviously if you want crack at them first time, they're going to want to know where they are with you. And finally, acknowledge the investment. Thanks for spending time with us. We know that you took time off from work or from your busy day to come in and see us. We appreciate that. And then let them know when you're going to get back to them. I commit to you to get back to you by September 10th or September 15th. Really important to do that. People walk away with an impression of your company, hopefully based on the interview experience. And then finally, your brand. As an employer, there's 4 or 5 factors that really, I think, come into this concept of an employer brand. How people perceive you in the marketplace. Are you a good place to work? Do you have a good reputation for treating people well? Do you have a good benefit package? Are the managers likely to help coach and develop you? Do they care about you? It's what makes people want to work for you, and equity is the brand value, the value that people place in your company. Finally, it's built up over repeated interactions. Trust is built over that kind of time. Are people really proud to work for you? Did they go out to their friends or to different events at restaurants or locations and say, hey, I work for this company, it's a great place to work, and here's why. People treat me well, I've got good opportunities, and I can move ahead. And by the way, sometimes a company with a great brand equity or a great employer brand, you don't always need to pay the top wages in the valley. It can be that you've got just the kind of way that you treat people favorably that brings them back. Because if you think about it, your best assets walk out the door every night. You want to make sure they come back the next day. So 5 keys to building that brand. You're the company brand to people you interview. You treat them with respect, and they'll share that experience with everyone. I didn't get hired at this company, but they sure treated me well, and I would go back to them if they had an opportunity. Make the job attractive to them so that they want to sell you. Sell the job a little bit. You may have to romance it. Here's what's in it for you, and here's where you can go. Millennials especially want to know where they can progress, what kind of training is available, and what kind of coaching they can get on the job. They may not be loyal to your company, but they're certainly loyal to your profession, and you want to keep them in place as long as you possibly can. Once you give an offer out to somebody, keep them sold on the job. It might be that it's going to take a couple of months before they actually report. When I was in India, for example, you'd make an offer to somebody, and the standard rule in India was people had to give 3 months notice. That's 90 days. Think about that. A lot can happen in 90 days. So very often you want to keep people sold, and you can do that by sending them a short note, sending them an email, giving them a call, taking them to lunch during the period between the time that they've accepted the job and they actually start. And then once they've come aboard, congratulate them on their good judgment. And remember that that job is not filled until that person actually shows up. So those are a couple of keys, in my opinion, to building your employer brand. So may all your interviews be successful. You hire great people, and make your company truly a great place to work. And hopefully it will make, I think, the interview experience better for you and for your candidates. So that's kind of a wrap on this. And Deborah, any questions that anybody has, I'd be happy to answer them right now.
I don't see any questions as of yet. Jody has said thank you for all the great content. So
I
we've
paid
had
Jody
that.
very well to say that, by the way. So
We will give just 1 more minute to see if anybody wants to go ahead and post a question.
yeah, I think the key to remember when you talk about hiring metrics, there's two things that I think really stand out. Number one, time to hire. How long does it take from the person when they first get into your pipeline? How long does it take to get them on board? Typically, the longer you take, the likelier they are to look for other positions. And number two, the cost per hire. What's it cost you in terms of your time and energy to hire that person? If you can shrink both of them, typically you're going to have a better chance of hiring somebody good. The second thing, or the third thing to remember is it's a very competitive marketplace. And very often your reputation as a company hinges on how well you treat your people and how well you treat your candidates. Because even if you don't hire them, they might be a future customer for your company or a client.
And Phil, Pam has also said thank you for the great content. Jerry typed in a question about will we be receiving the slides? It looks like you used a different set of slides than the ones we have downloaded. So Phil, can you make those slides available to me and I can get them to the participants?
Absolutely, absolutely, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So why don't all of you, anybody who is interested in this new slide deck from Phil, my email is at the top of the chat history, deborah.alvin@montana.edu. Just send me a quick email saying, please send me Phil's slides and I'll make sure you get those.
Thank you all for
we have
being
any
such good folks and hanging in
comments?
here with us.
Yes, thank you all for putting up with our technical difficulties. And just want to remind you that our next webinar is going to be Thursday, October 4th. And that one is going to be crowdfunding isn't just free money. And that will be with Lynn Egan, who is the Deputy Securities Commissioner at the Office of the Montana State Auditor and Commissioner of Insurance and Securities. So another really fantastic webinar next month, same time, same place. And if none of you have any more questions for Phil, we'll go ahead and sign off. All right, thank you all.